Day before yesterday.
Right,
I
wow.
think it was the day before yesterday.
Day before.
Anyways,
Just so you know.
Okay.
I don't care.
Okay.
A wasp had flown into our house up in Payson, right?
Yep. Oh, it was a yellow jacket.
My husband's allergic. And you guys were talking about that whole mouse thing, right?
Yeah.
My husband goes and gingerly picks it up by its wings and takes it outside and lets it go. So last night he comes outside and he starts to sit in a chair and the wasp is in the chair and I'm like, he did not sit on that wasp, but man.
Well, Tim was going to take one outside and let it go, and Holly goes, "What are you, crazy? It's going to come back in. Get rid of it."
And it just ended at that.
Yep. There was a whole nother conversation after that one.
Sometimes it's just not nice to be kind.
'Cause I had asked Holly later, I go, so where did Tim let the mouse go at? Because he said he's going to let it go. And I was like, okay, whatever. I go, did he take it way out by the wash out there? Well, no, because he'd come back. I go, that mouse ain't making it all the way back from the wash to here. No, he, blah, blah, blah. And I go, the kids didn't see it. No, he took it over there. And I go,
It's not coming back.
It's not
Who
coming
just put
back.
it like that? All right.
And we talk about the birds today.
Birds today.
So at my house, sometimes we miss the cats now that we used to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we know why they were so big.
Yeah.
Because they ate, and then at night they had dessert.
Our cats in our barn.
Welcome to our
They would,
fellowship.
they would turn around, they would catch the mice, they would eat the heads, but they'd leave the body right on the grain bin, and my mother had to open it up to get the grain.
You're gonna get us started. We're in trouble here.
Have some pastoral courage.
Holly.
Take control of the meeting.
Gross out, man.
I just want everybody to know what I deal with. All right.
Okay.
We're going to get started.
How old are we?
How old are we?
How old are we?
Well, this one, we're done with that one.
We
The one I-
finished
the
the
new one I
last.
gave you?
Yeah.
Nope. Nope, I didn't listen. Go to this one. Okay. So we have the summary of chapters 20 and then 25
Just
is
wait.
completed. The review we did, you guys said that we would, we'll do a complete study on 25. So I did a longer intro or summary of these chapters as they go through. And we're gonna start with Isaiah chapter 20. And the summary of the title of this is The Burden of Egypt. And you guys can follow along, I'm just gonna read it. Although this chapter has the same subject as the previous one, which was 19, it came later, at a later date, and was attended by different circumstances. So, right off the bat, on 19, we had talked about how Egypt, the Nile River had dried up
Right.
because of no rain in Ethiopia, which comes out of the mountains, and that feeds the Nile. And so there was no irrigation, there was no crops, there was no fishing. I mean, it devastated
livelihood.
no livelihood for
Yeah.
anybody. And so 20 is reiterating that.
And learn the first time.
Yeah, basically. There's a period of about 40 years between the two.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was a reminder.
It was a reminder, yes, right? Well, it's a next generation. And I don't know if in this country we see it, the
Right.
changes within generations.
Because our kids don't remember unless we tell them.
Right.
And since they
Exactly.
didn't live it,
Right. So how would they
it
know
doesn't
it?
That's
affect
why they
them.
have family stories that go through
Right.
generations.
Right, right. So there are several things of particular interest in these brief verses. There's a 3-year witness of Isaiah going naked and barefoot. Now, he wasn't really naked, okay? Because in that time period, they wore an undergarment, and then they wore an overgarment as a prophet. And it usually was a white with tassels on it or something. And it signified that he was a prophet, right? So he stripped off his outer garment and walked around in his undergarments, right? And he did this in semblance of the devastation that was to come. That even the prophets would be poor and do without. It would be a very devastating time, is what he was trying to emphasize to the people. And he did this for 3 years, walking around Egypt and Judah and Samaria. So he, in 3 years, he never put his prophet robes back on. And then he actually at one time removed his sandals and walked barefoot.
That would be tough.
That was tough, yeah. He endured some pain with that one, okay? So, there's only, the only reference to Sargon in the Old Testament, in this chapter, and the absolute promise of God to Judah after deliverance from this particular threat of the Assyrians, which you've already covered, right? So it's a reiteration, and it's a different group of people.
And it's to prove a point,
Yeah.
right? It's to make a point,
It's to
excuse
make
me,
a
not to
point,
prove a point,
right.
but make a point.
That if you don't teach your children or your next generation, they don't know, right? So it's up to the current generation to teach the next generation what God's requirements are, His promises. If you want to be wealthy or prosperous or anything else, you've got to follow His commandments, right? And when they get away from it, then, like you said,
History
associate with the wrong group.
repeats itself, yep.
It repeats itself,
The
right?
ground opens up.
The ground opens up.
Swallows 5,000.
Yeah. All right.
Plus,
So-
you might have been like, I got away with this for a year. It's not cooler.
Right.
How many years I
Yeah.
can do this for? I don't have to wear all these extra clothes.
Right. Yeah.
No, that wasn't the reason.
No, it wasn't that one. He actually
The Lord
suffered the
told
heat.
him to do this.
Yeah, yeah, but also actually in that area of the country, since I was there, I wore double layers of clothes when I was in Saudi Arabia and.
Wouldn't that be hotter?
No.
No, because
my socks.
the sweat underneath
Yeah.
actually cools your body, and it repels the heat off of you. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So-
why when you're working outside right now, especially here, you should wear long sleeves
Long
because
sleeves.
it helps.
It helps keep the
Depends on what
moisture
kind
in,
of
so you're not
material.
losing all that moisture, not dehydrating so fast.
Yeah, I've got these socks that are double layer socks.
Right.
They're called cool socks. And
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way. But they are.
They work.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first layer pulls the fluid
Moisture
off
out.
of your,
Wicks of moisture.
and then it evaporates on the second layer.
And it cools. Have you ever seen the old days? They used to have the canvas water bags. They used to hang them on the cars.
Oh, yeah.
On the radiator. Remember?
Yeah.
That's the coldest water you can get.
Because that wind kind of
That wind blows across it. It's evaporating what moisture's on the outside,
outside.
and it creates a convection current and cools water inside. And I just read the other day, you can do that with your fruit too in your house. Take a clay pot, put another clay pot inside of it smaller, put your fruit inside there, put sand around the other one, right? Pour water in it till it fills, right? And then let it evaporate, and that fruit will last 3 times longer in that pot because it cools. It actually cools down. It's a way to create a convection current and cool. It's actually colder inside the pot, and it keeps the fruit from being exposed to the heat. So anyway, it's just weird things I read. But anyway, so our title here mentions only Egypt, but it also includes Ethiopia, right? Both countries at this time of the prophecy were united under the Ethiopian dynasty.
And this says it was called Cush back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was Cush, right? So he symbolizes the humiliation of Egypt and Ethiopia, known as Cush, at the hands of the Assyrians, because they had come in and just devastated these people. Well, they were in a famine. They couldn't fight. They had no resources, right? So anyway, Ashdod was one of the 5 principal cities of the Philistines, the other being Gaza, which is still exists today, Ashkelon, and Ekron, and Gath. Ashdod is called Azotus in Acts 8:40. So it's the same place. You want to look it up and read it for me? All right. Acts 40.
Anything else we need to look up?
Well, there might be some more here coming
It's
up. Second Kings
Kings.
is coming up,
I
yeah.
like it, Second Kings.
So 840.
Yes,
Philip, however, appeared at Azotus
Azotus,
and traveled about preaching the gospel in all towns until he reached Caesarea.
Caesarea, right, okay. The reason we, since Alex hasn't been here before, well, we read a portion of the Bible. You can also, you can fact. Right, so it kind of proves that this person who wrote it, it was actually there. It's an actual place. It existed. Okay, so that's why we do the references. So it helps clarify. Okay. Anyway, it was a stronghold, a kind of a key to the capture of Egypt, and it was the site of the temple of Dagon, which was destroyed by Samson. Do you remember that story? Remember the one that he pulled the pillars in?
Yes.
That was the temple. Huh?
I thought he pushed him out.
Well, it pushed them out, pulled them in, whatever. They collapsed
He
them.
destroyed it.
Yeah,
That's
but that
what
was the
counts.
temple of Dagon. Yeah. So Isaiah is talking about something that hasn't even happened yet. He's prophecy. He's a prophet. He not only does he talk about these things coming up for Egypt and Ethiopia, but he even talks about Revelation, and that's coming up in chapter 25. So we'll get there, right? Maybe today. Anyway, until recently, Tartan was thought to be the personal name of Sargon's general in charge of the war against Ashdod, but the word is not a person, right? And it makes it confusing when you're reading through the Isaiah. You're like, who's this person? Well, it was an officer. It's a title of a person that's in charge. Right? But the evacuations have revealed again the absolute trustworthiness of the Bible. Sargon founded the last and greatest of the Assyrian dynasties. Right? He was a successor to Shalmaneser and the father of Sennacherib. Assyrian army to help them take Jerusalem, and then the Assyrian army turned against them. In the Bible, Shalmaneser is apparently the conqueror, but it seems that the final phase of the conquest was completed by Sargon in 722 BC, and it was a fact confirmed in 2 Kings
Got it.
18:10.
At the end of the 3 years, the Assyrians laid siege. Well, the Assyrians took it. So Samaria was captured in Hezekiah's 6th year, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel.
King of Israel, right? So we're by following Isaiah through the 66 chapters, you have a timeline plotted out to the end times. He even goes through the Messiah. He goes through the disciples. He goes through all of it because God revealed it to him.
Isaiah complements the Revelation, right?
Yes, he does a lot. He actually talks about the end times, right? So anyway, you said in 2 Kings he took it, right? That's a translation. It should be they took it, right? But that's just because of the translators of the time period, right? Anyway, he succeeded Shalmaneser just before the siege of Samaria was completed in 722 BC and reigned until 705 BC when he was succeeded by Sennacherib. Okay, all right. Isaiah 21 makes mention of the fact that Isaiah's symbolic act, going naked and barefoot, was interpreted to the people in the year that Ashdod fell to Sargon's commander-in-chief. So Sargon's inscription date the event in 711 BC, right? Since Isaiah had already been walking naked and barefoot for a period of 3 years, that symbolic protest together with time factors in history. Anyway, all right. So that was basically what 20.
Different
generation.
generation.
Right. But the famine, the period of no water, was a shorter period.
Well, and it was about him symbolizing they're going to be bared,
Yeah.
and shamed.
And shamed again, right. And be the scorned of people, right?
Okay.
All right. So we're going to start with Isaiah chapter 21, a summary. There's 3 burdens that are delivered by the prophet in this chapter. That of Babylon, which is in Isaiah 21, 1 through 10, which is this one. And that of Edom, remember Edom? From the study of Moses, and then after that, Jacob. Can't remember what chapter that's in now. Deuteronomy? No. Leviticus. Excuse me, Leviticus. After Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Yes, Deuteronomy. I was right. Anyway, there's a full study in Deuteronomy about it. Where he got his wives and
Oh, yeah,
the whole
yeah,
bit, right? Okay. Anyway, and then and that of Arabia, which is not heard of very much. Arabia was it was conquered and taken over so many times, and finally they anyway. So these burdens, there's 3 burdens. So the first one is the burden of Babylon. Now, the prophecy applies to the fall of Babylon to Cyrus and Darius, which occurred long after Isaiah's lifetime. Right? Babylon was a city on the river Euphrates, which we know from the modern Baghdad in Iraq.
Ah.
We can actually place it today. Right? That's
Did
pretty
you
cool.
want Genesis to?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you got it?
Yeah, but it's got all those words in it that I can't. Eric and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
Shinar, right?
You know all those words. You said them perfectly.
Don't know that I did, because I really don't know how they're pronounced.
I feel like you did.
Yep,
I
it
feel
was
like
good.
you did as
It
well.
was great. We have a consensus.
Practice makes perfect.
So, anyway, the Negev, or Negev, is still today the name of the region that is south of Judah. So, if you go south of Baghdad, or if you were to go to what was originally Babylon, right, it's in the area of Negev and Negev, and it's very well known by our people that were over there. I actually got to go through Baghdad, so when I was in the military, and that was a sign. There's a sign as you go through that says Negev. And I'm like, that's a pretty neat name. Wonder what it means. Right. So, a special message about Babylon that God gave to Isaiah in a vision. The message struck Isaiah like a storm of sand that a fierce wind blows from the Negev, which is a desert region. You always fight in the desert, right?
Mm-hmm.
Terrible trouble is coming. In the vision, Isaiah seemed to see a cruel sight. Okay? And those who robbed the other people are now themselves suffering. So, what he's trying to describe there is the fact that the time Babylon took Israel and took everybody captive and took away their wealth, and they put them into bondage and slavery and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a time of God brings back justice for these people. That's what he's seeing, right? Now, enemies are attacking and robbing them. Those who ruined the other people are now themselves suffering. So, God's plan, he always flips it, right? And so, it's always about the remnant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You ever notice that? The ones that stay true and faithful, he reinstates them in their proper place, in their proper area, and they're rewarded for their faithfulness. It's much like us, as long as we're faithful and stay true, he protects us. He guides us, So that's what's going on there. Now, enemies are destroying and ruining them. The army of Elam attacked the cities. Army of Media surrounded the cities. The Lord is ending all the miserable pain and death of the army of Babylon has caused. Because you remember, Babylon went through and was conquering country after country after country there. At one time, there was 38 different provinces he conquered, right? Well, at the outer skirts of that is Elam, right? Elam, and then also Media, which is the far east side of that area. They built up two great armies and attacked from two sides. Yeah, so it was pretty. Anyway, that caused the fall. The army couldn't withstand the numbers that were coming at them. It's the only way to take over a large area like that. So anyway, the burden of Edom, a very short message about Duma, a small place in the desert about 300 miles southeast of Jerusalem. It's still there, by the way, just so you know. You can look it up on a map. It's still there. Anyway, Duma was an important crossroads where routes from Babylon and Edom and Syria met together, right? Merchants could exchange news about political events that could affect their trade.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a conference center almost, right?
There's not going to be a good crop of oranges this year.
Right? Yeah. That's the stock exchange in the early days.
Yep.
That's what that was right there. Right? So anyway, a caller whom Isaiah does not name in the region of Seir, a place in Edom, asks a question from a lookout. It says, the lookout answers, morning and night probably refer to a time of peace and a time of war. The answer therefore warns that after a short break, war will begin again. Right? So that's the burden of Edom. They got attacked. They survived it. They regrouped, and they'll be coming back. And for an army in that time period, it would take about 3 to 5 years for them to build up enough men and supplies and train the army, the men that survived, and then gather other people, merchants, you know, to go back and retake it. Does that make sense? All right. So that was their burden. And then the burden of Arabia and Tema was 200 miles south of Duma. Now, if you know that 300 miles southeast of Jerusalem is Duma, and then another 200 miles south of that is the last is called Tema. It was the last king of the Babylon lived there. Dedan is 90 miles south of Tema. Both are in the desert between Babylon and Judah. It's a very desolate area. And that's why the kings would flee there, because you could see for miles in every direction. So it was hard to capture a king if he was on the run, right? And they had lookouts, right? Anyway, the inhabitants of Dedan and Tema must provide help for the people who are escaping from the terrors of war. Now,
And the last king of Babylon lived in that area?
he was banished out there, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Babylon was just completely destroyed, the area of Babylon.
And he was exiled
Yes.
basically to that area.
Yep. Away from any type of influence or power.
And yet they still came for him.
They keep trying to get him, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Anyway, well, God he said not to let anyone live. Remember? And he actually punished some of his own people because they disobeyed him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you leave one insurrectionist, we'll call it, he will start and find other people. Same type of, a lot, right? Okay. So, a special message that God gave Isaiah for the Arabs who live in the region called Dedan: order your caravans to bring water to the people who urgently need it, and also instruct the people in Tema, bring food to those who are hungry and they're very tired because enemies have been chasing them with swords and arrows.
And that's the whole exile thing. So
Yes.
they've been moving further and further away. Okay.
Right. So he's telling the Arab people that you need to support the people that are getting out of the war. The casualties of war is always the children, the women, the elderly, and they don't have any resources.
Right.
So God is providing resources for them. Okay. Included in this is another message by Isaiah. The Lord gave me another special message, right? And exactly 1 year from now, the power of the army of Kedar will definitely end. It will end on time, just as certainly as the workers' contract ends. After exactly 1 year, few soldiers in Kedar's army will remain. The Lord of God of Israel has spoken. Very
So
prophetic.
basically telling them, hang in there.
Hang in there. The
And
remnant,
about a year from
you're
now,
going to be all right. You're
you're
going to
gonna be
survive.
okay.
So a year from now, or a year from when the prophecy takes place?
When the prophecy
It takes
Okay.
place. Yes, it's from that.
Inside.
This is all in the future.
Right.
He didn't even live during this time period.
Right.
Because it had to have gone through
All
the
those things, that's
Battle
right.
of Babylon,
That's right, that was a
and
dumb
Edom,
question.
and then Arabia.
No. It's just
So-
so you catch it, so you know that it's in the future.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 22. Yeah, I hope this helps, because instead of trying to read all those verses and decipher, this kind of a summary. Anyway, chapter 22 starts out with Jerusalem, the capital of Judea, will be under siege. It always is, right? The order of events is not clear to us today, but many people's joy about the defeat of Babylon would not last long. The army that overcame Babylon will next head south, and that's Judah, into Judah, right?
Wow, okay.
Then that army will attack Judah and Jerusalem again. Okay? The order of events is not clear, like I said, but many people's, I got that twice, didn't I? Oh, no. The army that overcame Babylon will head south. There's a reference to Elam and Kir, which were probably nations in part of what is today Iran. Still having conflicts there. There's never been peace there. You know that, right? That's been over 2,000 years. There's no peace there. All right, I think that's part of this. God said he would make the area desolate. And it's hard to survive there. It's nomadic people and basically terrorists. It's the only ones to survive there. And they rob other people to stay. You know? So the people were behaving in a very different manner from how the Lord intended them to behave. All right? Still, the people only cared about their own pleasures, right? They did not bother themselves about God's instructions. they had not obeyed him, and their actions showed that they were not sorry about their evil behavior. Well, that hasn't changed much, has it? Right? So, the people did not really expect to die tomorrow. It was merely a way to say that only today's pleasures interested them.
So eat, drink, and be merry,
Married,
for tomorrow we shall die.
Right? Ever heard the expression?
Okay.
Right? But the Lord knew the future. These people would never change their behavior, so they would never qualify for him to forgive them. Wow.
These people would never
Yeah.
change their behavior. It says that in 22.
Yep, it says that. Is it going to be down there?
I believe you.
Okay.
I'm just following along my
Okay.
Bible too.
All right. Anyway, all right. I believe it's before verse 16. Should be somewhere along there.
No, it's before that.
Okay, it's before that. Okay. I know that 16 starts
So
in
your
the...
dying day, the sin will not be atoned for.
Yeah, your sin. Yeah, till your dying day, right? Okay. All right. So, people must choose between trust in God and trust in human effort. In fact, whole nations must choose between trust in God and trust in human effort. The verses 16 through 25 show this principle. Kind of like today, huh? Right? Shebna was the king's chief minister. He expressed his feelings of importance by his proud actions. Wow. Sounds like the, what do they call them? The elders of the, what do they call them? Sanhedrin at the time of Jesus. They were more worried about their pocketbooks and their influence and power than they were about the Messiah. You know,
Their reputations.
their reputations, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, anyway, he tried to use his job to make himself even more important and powerful. Wow, that sounds familiar, right? So, Shebna's proud actions made God very angry. God's judgment would soon follow. Shebna would lose everything.
It's
Okay?
very interesting that you can get to that point in a religious entity, right? And then it poisons you.
Yep. I think sometimes when things get bigger than you are, then your mind gets bigger than, and it's not reality anymore, right? Does that make sense? You say, "Oh, I've got 200 people following me," right? You know.
Yeah,
I'm
not God, but me.
Yes, that's the you heard it, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because it becomes about me instead of about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is just because people are always going, "Hey, you did a good job," you know, and that ego starts growing, you know, and we got to be really careful with that.
It makes God angry.
It makes him angry, and I'm nope, not me. I don't need theirs opening up around me. Anyway, all right. So the only important people owned a key at this time period to the city, right? Which was long and heavy. In ancient times, a key was a long piece of wood. It had wooden pegs that went in. The pegs fitted small holes in a wooden bar on the inside of the door. If you had the bigger the well, anyway, I'll go on. Only the owner of a key could use it to open or to close the door. So the key was also a sign of authority, right? Remember how some people will get the key to a city? That's back to this reference, okay? The size and weight of a key meant that the owner carried it on his shoulders. See Revelation 3:7-8.
He's got
So I
Oh,
have
yeah.
it, and it says, this is the red letters, just so everybody knows. So this is Jesus talking. And to the angel, divine messenger of the church in Philadelphia, write, these are the words of the Holy One, the true One, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one will be able to shut, and he who shuts and no one will be able to open. I know your deeds. See, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. For you I have a little power, and have kept my word, and have not renounced nor denied my name. So,
When he says a little power, it means he's kept it in reserve.
Yeah, mine says, I know that you have little strength,
Yes.
yet you've
Yep.
kept my word.
yeah.
So, during depression and times of hardships,
Mm-hmm.
follow him. He's going to protect you. He's going to take care of you because he has the key, right? So that's two references, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about those periods of time are, well, we know over 2,000 years apart. So he's talking about Revelation, referencing that in this time period. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, okay, should people choose to depend only on Elohim and not on God, they too would completely fail. Elohim is a pagan, right? It was the Lord who gave Jerusalem to David to be in his capital, and it's in Samuel, 2 Samuel 5, 6 through 10.
Mm-hmm.
And we, you got that?
What?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, she got it.
It says, before this starts, it says capture of Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites,
Jebusites, yeah.
the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking, David cannot come in hither. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same is the city of David. And David said on that day, Whosoever getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind, that are hated of David's soul, he should be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, The blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So David dwelt in the fort, and called it the city of David. And David built round about from Milo and inward.
Mm.
And David went on and grew great, and the Lord God of hosts was with him.
Mm-hmm. So the Jebusites would run the lame and the sick out, keep them out of the city of Jerusalem.
Treated them like they were lepers.
Yes, even though they were poor. Well, what is the instruction that God gave to the disciples? You know, and to every church. Built that fort, brought them in, and then put a commander over them. So they had protection and were taken care of. Well, guess who his followers? Now those people hated the Jebusites because they've been treated so badly. He built an army, didn't he?
Right, but he let them through the walls for a good reason.
Yes, he did. It was the Lord who gave Jerusalem to David, right? Anyway, and it was the Lord who gave the entire country to his people. It's the promised land, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's in Joshua 1, 2.
I got it.
You got it?
Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites.
Mm-hmm. Joshua would lead them across on dry land. Anyway, that was in my sermon last week.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Anyway, the people could not have attained either the city or the country by their own efforts. God had to be there. They weren't strong enough. Right? Now, so there was no possibility they could keep them by their own strength. God always makes it so that if you depend on him, he takes care of it. Even the weakest of them helped build the city of Jerusalem. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The weak and the poor shall inherit the earth. Right? The meek, as Jesus said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prophesied. Isaiah was so blessed. All right. Are we doing okay with time? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, chapter 23. It's interesting. This chapter is about Tyre and Sidon, which were two busy trade ports. They were north of Israel, and it was what is today part of Lebanon. And I don't know if you saw about 4 months ago that big explosion in Lebanon. The granary blew up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the port of Tyre. Tyre.
Tyree.
Yeah. Okay. It's not named Tyre anymore, but that's the port area.
Mm.
Okay. Anyway, when David and Solomon ruled Israel, they both enjoyed good relations with the people of Tyre. Okay. 1 Kings 5, 1 to, we don't need to do all 12, but anyway, it's just that those 12 verses tell you about their relationship, about how good it was. They traded evenly and they were fair with each other. It was prosperous for both. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then Solomon began to marry many foreign wives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they introduced Solomon and his people to the worship of idols.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find that in 1 Kings 11, 1 through 8. There's his downfall,
Mhm.
right? All right. So God sent a series of prophets to warn his special people against their wicked behavior.
Mhm.
But it was in vain. The people would not change their behavior. Now severe punishment would follow, and it would begin with Tyre and Sidon. All right, so if that's your major source of income, just like the Nile, right, was the
Mhm.
major source of income for the people of Egypt, he's going to do something to the ports. Something's going to
Busy
happen
trade
here,
ports,
right?
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 It's cut you off, basically. You no longer get an allowance.
Right. This was because their people had some responsibility for Israel's failure to obey the Lord, right?
You can tell I teach children, huh?
Yeah, I can tell. So, Tarshish was a major port on the north coast of Spain. It was famous for its huge ships that carried heavy loads of goods for long distance across the sea. The sea was the means which ships carried huge quantities of goods, like off the ports of California right now. There are all those ships stacked up out there. Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway, the trade gave the merchants of Tyre and Sidon their great wealth, right? Everywhere people gave great honor to the merchants from Tyre and Sidon because they were successful, but their success had not impressed God. Such people felt they had no need of God. The money talks, and God says, "That's not yours; it's mine."
Worldly things.
Yes, worldly
Get in
things,
the
right?
way.
Another same
I'm-
lesson we've always
I'm
heard.
Successful.
I'm successful. I didn't have God.
I don't need God.
Yeah. Anyway, people in Tyre depend on the sea for their trade. God's power over the sea means that God also controls the use of the sea by the Tyre's merchants. God spoke, and it was as if the sea was now acting like a person to refuse to help anymore. Right? When he spoke, what happened is the trade winds changed.
I was going to say no wind in their sails.
Yeah. Ships are dead,
You
right?
can't- Yeah, they didn't have motors back then.
Didn't have motors, and then enough oars to row it out, right?
Yeah.
But also, what happened when you change the way that winds blow off that area, you have the Nile comes out and floats, and it turns into 7 rivers, is what it does. Those are trade ports along there, right? And the wind's blowing. But if it's coming in, what are that pushes the ships into those currents? It's silt.
It's also dangerous.
Yeah, it's very dense, but it's silt. It runs aground, and you have to wait till a flood for it to come loose. So he reversed the ocean, and it fought against him. There was nothing they could do, right?
Yeah, because it would slow down the water.
Yes.
Coming out of the river.
Yes, everything backs up, and so it's just sludge building up. It's amazing. It's just, and God spoke. That's all it took.
Yeah.
I control the winds, right?
He controls the 4 winds.
Yeah, he controls everything, right? So, anyway, the people in Egypt could not sell their crops. The winds are going the wrong direction, can't sell down, right? Crops from were tired and saying we're not able to trade. In the end, farmers away to Cyprus to avoid the enemy's attack. Wherever they go, they cannot avoid God's judgment. In other words, that winds across that, they couldn't even get to Spain, and that's the shortest distance. They could not. They couldn't fight the winds. Well, a great example of that is the reverse. Is what did Christ do? He walked out on the water and told the winds to be calm, right? And it was storming. They were sinking, and he's like, "It's nothing," right? But that same authority and that same power can
Right.
reverse, right? And God always uses nature, doesn't he? Ever
Yep.
notice that? He always uses nature to discipline, right? Because you don't want him to come slap you. Anyway,
No.
so at the end of 70 years, the Lord will deal favorably with Tyre again. That's a long time of punishment, isn't it? Is that a generation and a half?
Yep.
Yeah. He wipes out the current generation and most of the next one till they learn. So these are young people that are, I'd say young people, probably mid-20s, that it turns favorable in their time period, right? Okay, where am I at here? Okay, the Lord will deal favorably. Once again, all the world will be Tyre's customers, but now all of Tyre's profits will go to the Lord. All the money that the merchants earn from their commerce will go to the Lord's service. The money will supply food and clothes for the Lord. Right? and against behavior that does not include the desire to trust God. What he's teaching these new people is if you tithe and give and follow my commandments,
Mhm.
I'll bless you. Well, they picked up on that pretty quick. And they become very prosperous, and Lebanon's still there today, that city on the coast. And it's a very huge trade port for commercial grains and crops. That's why it was like the grain or the mills. We call them the grain silos. You get dust in there,
Mm-hmm.
and if you get a spark,
It's
it's,
gone.
it's a big, huge bomb. Well, that's what happened there. And so anyway, all right, historical note, right? When Solomon was king, Tari assisted with the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. No, during that time period when David and them were in good favor with Tari, right?
Mm-hmm.
They helped build the temple. The great temple, they shipped them in. That's amazing. At one time they were very favorable, and then 70 years they were bad, and then they're back in favor again. For God's servant Elijah, we know that, right? Do you remember the story, right? Zephyr was on the coast between Tyre and Sidon.
Mhm.
The permanent lesson of Tyre 10 talks about how wealth will corrupt if it's not done, and if God's not given the glory for it,
Right.
right? And used for His purposes, right? Money is for us to spend as the Lord directs, not as we direct,
Correct.
right? So that's what chapter 23 is about. Pretty amazing if you think about it. This is kind of a quick way to go through a few of them. All right,
Because there's how many 66 in this?
66 in here,
And we did the first
19.
19.
Straight through.
every verse.
Yeah, and it's just the same, it's just different time
Right.
periods. But it's the same story over and over.
It's a continuous lesson about turn away from God, become
Get
destroyed,
punishes.
be punished. And we're going to hit you where it hurts you the most.
Yes.
And oh, by the way, it's happening right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but then it's, okay, now you can come back. You can move back in.
Right.
And then
Right.
it's, oh, why are you doing that again? Get out. You're destroyed.
Right? It's just,
You've been
it's a
punished.
cycle, isn't it?
Then you come back.
It's hard to break the cycle, isn't
And
it?
do you think that they forgot a lot of times?
Well, it's usually a couple generation and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the time.
Because it's that believes what they're being told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see?
It's what they hear.
Because
yeah.
And they're not listening to their
on
parents.
them.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
just gonna say, it's the media.
It's not they're not listening to their parents. They're
Right.
listening to everybody but their parents
And grandparents.
and grandparents, right? But there's
We
some
know it all.
that will make
my
it
phone
through.
told
Yeah, some of them will survive.
Well, that'll never change. Kids will always think they know everything.
Yep.
The difference is when they get to a certain age, usually they'll say, hey,
Yeah.
you were right.
Like,
But I don't think this generation will because they get it from their phones and the phone is all knowing.
Yeah, right. It's,
Right.
it's,
The all-knowing
it's what,
rule.
is that an idol?
If it's on the internet, it must be
It's
true.
an idol.
It's an idol.
Do you know how proud I was that day that I went up to Erie, and my oldest boy, the first words out of his mouth were, "Dad, you were right."
Mhm.
Me being as smarty that I am, I said, "Oh, which thing was I right about?"
What is that?
Yeah.
They
I would
made
have said,
what?
"Tell me more."
Golden idols,
Yeah.
right? And idols out of dirt and sand and, right? And so guess what this is made,
Made
out
out of, yep,
So,
and gold.
and sand.
Same desert.
Same exact thing,
Same exact.
different format.
Yep. Well, yeah, that changes. My son came out, was in the Navy. He came, my son, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
My son's like 6'3" or something like that.
6'2".
6'2", anyway, he's about 280 pounds. But he grabs you with a bear hug. I feel like I'm going to break.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Dad, you were right."
Dad,
Yep.
you were right.
I'm like, that was the best day of my life right there.
Yep.
And he says, now I understand. And it was about the way I disciplined and the way I held him accountable for things he did. And he got in the military and he's like, oh, you were easy.
Yep.
I was easy on you guys.
Well, and I get that one time. Well, now I know why you're so hard on me. I go, well, I really wasn't hard on you, but in your perception, why was I so hard on you?
Mhm.
You know, because
It's-
we weren't that hard.
Yeah, well, it
Not
appears
compared to probably like your upbringing,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So anyway, that was pretty cool. So we're going to start 24 here, right? Now, chapters 24 through 27 form a new section in the book of Isaiah. And that's one reason I want to get into that, right? But they do not include any references to actual events about particular nations. Wow. So he's got away from Egypt and Ethiopia and Judah and Palestine.
Oh,
and,
so it's in general now.
it's more applicable to
Worldly.
To
Well,
anybody.
right. Okay.
Got it.
So anyway, chapter 24 repeats the general message about God's plan to destroy all the nations on the earth, right? This chapter describes events that are still in the future. It describes God's judgment against people who have not obeyed His laws, and the result is great trouble across the whole world. Now, let me emphasize something.
Right,
The
because
Mediterranean
we talked about that. They don't have a word for earth
right.
in the Hebrew,
in
so
Hebrew, right.
it was dirt, and so
It was
Right.
their known area of civilization. Right. Okay. All right. So anyway, chapter 25 through 27 describe events after God achieves His purpose. Right. So chapter 24 starts out and it says, God is angry because people have not followed His commandments again.
Mm-hmm.
Is now going to destroy the earth. He's just going to lay waste to this whole area. Right. Anyway, the people do not obey God's laws. Laws here means the things that God has taught to the people. Right? He has taught those things in the Bible, and He has taught them in other ways.
right through the Holy Spirit,
Through the prophets, through the Holy Spirit.
through prophecy,
Right. The people have changed
seeds.
God's rules. Uh-oh.
like the
Ooh. Go ahead. We see some of that happening today, right? Anyway.
I was gonna say like the churches that say that it's okay for you to be married to a same-sex partner,
Right?
because it's okay. Come on in
And the
here,
next-
we got a Starbucks.
The next-
Yeah. Built by another airplane.
Right? They buy another airplane. Anyway, that means that the people have their own moral ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that, right? They do not follow God's ideas. The people have decided to forget the covenant. Ooh. In other words, they refuse to obey God.
Yeah.
If you break the covenant with God, then you get what you deserve, right? Because He takes His protection away. And we know the world is just going to come and smack you hard. It just beats you up, right? So, anyway, Isaiah mentioned these 6 groups of people in society in this chapter. He did not tell us that he really meant everybody. The priests were the leaders of religion. The masters were the servants, male bosses. And the mistresses were the maids, female bosses. The buyers were the things from the seller. To borrow means the opposite of lend. The lender lent things to the borrower. People that lent money charged for it. Therefore, the person who owned money had to pay even more money back. Sounds like indebtedness, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We call it a credit card now.
Right.
They used to
Right.
call them indentured servants.
Indentured servants,
Indentured
yes.
servants, exactly.
Okay. Anyway,
So basically, he says no one is exempt.
no one is exempt from this judgment, right? Here Isaiah was writing about both rich and poor people. Everyone's included, right? There's no escape from God's punishments. They seem to come from above the earth. No kidding, right? And they shake the country. The country may mean the whole earth at the time. People have praised God, but Isaiah feels very, very sad. Because he knows it's not true. It's fake. You know? What does it call them? I call them the pew sitters, right?
He
The
does.
ones that show up every Sunday and sit in the
Yeah,
same spot.
Sunday Christians.
Sunday Christians, right? And Monday afternoon, they're at the bar, right?
Are we two sitters? Because we sit in the same spot every Sunday?
No, that's
I know.
IT department. IT, leave
You
it alone.
don't sit in the same spot every Sunday.
No,
get up, move
you
around.
don't, because I end up sitting in your spot for at least 6 weeks at a
Oh,
time,
this
twice
is
a
true.
year.
And then
Right.
I sit in her spot.
So you're
Right.
Bravo, touche.
Touche. All right.
My dad was an usher
Yeah.
for the church,
Mhm.
so we took my grandmother, I think it was Christmas, and we got out of church on Christmas Day, and we're following Dad down the road, we're taking Grandma home, and he pulls off to the Ushers Club. And my grandmother says, "Where's your dad going?" "To the Ushers Club." "Oh, isn't that so nice that all the ushers get together after church?"
Yeah.
We did not enlighten her.
Usher me another one up here, buddy. You know, that's like a joke I heard the other day. They asked the guys, who's the most trusted person that you know? Stand by them, and they crushed the bartender to death. Bad story. Anyway, so you can see how that would work with the ushers, right?
Yes,
Okay.
bartenders are often their secondary role as counselors.
Right?
That and salon owners.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one's counseling and the other one's gossip, isn't
Right.
it?
So.
I think I did backhand him.
The look I got?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Anyway, there is no.
There's
He's
no
so sad
straight
because he has
forward.
seen the. God has done what was right, but for many people it means that something awful has happened, right? Some people are not loyal. Isaiah does not say who these people are. Only a few will remain or survive. And
And that has to hurt.
yes,
To
it
know
does.
that, to see
Mhm.
that.
As a vision, right? Yeah, you know that just troubled him
Well,
terribly.
because he knows that this are his future family.
He's involved in that, isn't it?
So
Yep.
it's like watching your,
Do we want to pass those out for next week, or do you want to wait for next week to pass them out?
what would it be like, great grandkids?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
something like that.
Fifth generation.
So three or fourth grade.
Yeah, great, something like that,
Level,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
When you see that like that and you haven't experienced what's been going on, I mean, he did experience it because he wasn't feeling that way about the generations he
Walked in it.
Right.
It's still,
Yes.
right.
so to
So-
speak, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
at first I was like, everybody's got to be saved. You know, even Satan's got. If there's some that you just can't, you just can't, and so they deserve what they.
Kind of like my revolving door.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Nothing you can do for them. Nothing.
And what did Jesus say?
Dust your feet
off
and walk
keep
on to
going.
the next
Yeah.
town.
Right? And God says, I already know their future. I know it. They're not going to change, and they're not going to be
and
forgiven.
because they have it in their face to change and the free will, right,
Mhm.
to
They
do
have
it.
free will to do it.
And because they didn't, then God's like, all right,
Yeah.
this I knew this was, but I gave you a chance.
Mhm.
We'll have a conversation at a later date.
Well, that was God, but they'll have to talk to Jesus again.
Yep, it's the second one.
You imagine, they're like, don't I know you? Yeah, remember when I came to your town and,
When
Oh.
you turn.
You lived
you-
in Tonopah, didn't you?
are you that guy? Yeah, I'm that guy.
Right. I'm going to hang on to him until next
We're
week.
gonna hang
Yeah,
out. We'll give one to
right.
Chet.
All right, give one to
He's
Chet,
not gonna be
please.
here.
You'll enjoy this one, Chad. There's quite a few to look up on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
More homework, yes.
And just
Oh, just
to
now.
make sure everybody knows, right?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. You were starting to.
No, it's all right.
Tuesday. Bible study is next Tuesday at 7.
Change your calendars if
Yes.
you have it on
Not
your...
Wednesday.
If you have it on your false idol, change it.
Well, you know why? She's working downtown.
Yeah.
Sherry was downtown today. That traffic getting back, you can imagine,
I
right?
saw that.
Sometimes
And
Tuesday-
selfishly, we want to spend a little extra time up in
I-
our pace and home.
I make the travel, because we're going down
Right.
south to look,
Right.
so.
Right,
Yeah.
but what I was also gonna tell you is I'm gonna start uploading all of this,
Okay, Shelley will help me.
right? And you'll have it,
We're gonna
Thought you
put
said
it
you
on
were gonna give me
the,
one of them little drive
By
things.
the webpage.
On the
That's
web
right.
webpage. Yeah, it'll be on the webpage,
Okay.
right? And so that it's
So
gonna
then
be
I can
available.
reference if I remember reading something about
Right,
that.
and you can pull it
Oh,
up.
Then you're gonna make me look through how many of these things to find it.
You might learn it, huh?
I might
You will
actually
get
start
very
remembering stuff.
distracted. You better
well,
write down what you're
if it's a
looking for.
PDF document,
because
it can
once
be
you get in, you'll completely
OCS.
Oh, yeah,
And then
Well, I do
all you
that
have to tell
now.
is type in find a word
Yes.
and it'll find it.
and we can do
Yeah.
that.
Well, so yeah,
That'll
so you don't have to OCS it, just OCR it.
OCR. that's
You just
the-
have to, in Word, save it as a PDF, and it'll already be text.
and we can do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
You can take all these and
so
save them
after
as
you
a
save
PDF.
it,
Right, I did.
just go save as, and then you put the file name, and so then you'll have the Word document, the PDF, the Word, and then that way it's word searchable, because you don't want to distribute your document,
Right.
because and then you'll have to write protect it. And just PDF it, and then people can't plagiarize it, because
Right.
easily they can copy
Can't
and
mess
paste,
with it.
Yeah,
but
Well,
they
then I must
can't.
already have that program because all I do is Control F in a PDF document and it goes right to where I want it.
So yes,
So
but
some documents are OCR, some are not.
Okay.
so like at work, some of the older drawings
Mm-hmm.
and documents, they were just scanned in on a scanner. So it's a PDF, but it's a picture,
It's a PDF of a picture. Gotcha.
pretty much.
Gotcha.
So
Instead
you
of it being a word that was converted to.
Right,
Okay.
at the core of the document. So sometimes you can tell
So
it to do it, and it works pretty good, but not always.
That's one of the things I was playing with when I first started my going virtual and the PDF documents, because they're so large, they have to drop them in my Google Drive. And then I have to download them from there, and they're a PDF, but they're images. So I can OCR it. It takes a little bit, but I can put in a page number and it will find it.
Okay.
that's cool.
Well,
All
and then
right,
it makes it smaller usually too.
Yeah.
So it's not a
all right.
picture.
So Chet,
Thank you.
you'll be
Tuesday, we're going to all
All
Tuesdays.
all
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
All Tuesday, okay,
Because I am downtown Wednesdays
Okay.
and Thursdays,
yeah,
so
hard to get out.
I
back
don't
out
have
here.
Sherry to get the carpool lane every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well, and then the only reason why we did Wednesday in the first place is because that's what our used to church did.
Yeah,
right.
right.
So we just tried to keep it
The
seamless.
same.
The church we used to go to, they had Bible study on Monday.
Right.
Tuesdays, I got
and
a
on
lot of
Friday.
Time zone.
Yeah, it was Monday, and then they had one on Friday, and then they had one on Monday, Wednesday, and then the kids was on Friday, but if the parents went and dropped their kids off, then they could go get another Bible study. So there's really no,
Set time.
Yeah, no,
and then we liked Wednesday because it's in the middle, and, you know,
It's
we didn't
kind of-
want to be prophesied by, so we wanted to make sure we kept our focus. But Tuesday's good, works for me.
Yeah, I think it'll work better for people.
And if you can't attend live, you can
You
always
can always
attend
watch
It'll be videos.
by
my-
Memorex.
Mr. Dave, I need a favor before we leave.
What?
Put it on my new phone.
Well, why? Because in 2 weeks you'll have another new phone.
Come on now. Then I'll have the boys change it over. I'll figure it out.
Because every time David goes to text you, it's a different phone number. I
Not
told
every
him
time. I
yesterday.
had that same phone for a long time.
I told him yesterday. I said text Chet, and then today I called him. I said you need to call Chet and make sure it's Chet's number. What did I get? I got a text that he sent to somebody else. Hey, is this Chet's number?
Kind of, you know, that calling.
Yeah, I
But I
understand.
go, no, this has to be the number, because we just chatted in March on texting.
Oh, but it
January.
changed.
No, it was January, and then I think April or March, because you didn't feel
No,
good.
you sent
Then I got
something to
him
him,
with
but he
my
never
phone's
got it.
being shut
He
off,
wasn't-
so,
Yeah.
you know.
So just if you do this, if you can get an iPhone with wherever you get your phone, then when you switch phones over, the new iPhone you get will go, oh, is this your new phone? Yeah.
Right.
Let me transfer my
Yeah.
stuff over.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to reinstall
Yes.
YouTube and
Yep.
Gmail, and all your settings and everything will go from one to the other.
Right.
They're amazing.
That does make
way.
it easier.
But worst comes to worst, give us a
I'll
call.
Give us a call.
I will find you one way or another.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
If you do a Google search, trust
Yep.
me, if you go on Google, and that's probably what he did, and you put in churches in Tonopah, ours comes up first, and my number comes up first.
Right.
That happened when we moved out here. When we were researching churches. Yep.
And I know it's mine first because I get all the phone calls, usually if I'm at work and it's Sunday. Hey, where's
Sunday
church?
morning.
What time's church?
Right now.
Is this a church? Yeah. Oh, I go, this is my personal cell phone. Oh, okay. I go, and then I have to explain, we're not some,
Huge thing.
we're
Yeah.
not
Right.
a